So we're going to wait for 2 more minutes so we can give the people the opportunity to enter the session. Assalamu alaikum جميعا. Good afternoon, everyone. Our audience from the virtual site who's joining us through Zoom, and the participants who are joining us here physically. The participants are part of the program that is designed and developed by Shabab Mujtama'i, which is the youth workers empowerment. And today's session is actually part of this program, and it's offered publicly. So hopefully you're going to enjoy the session and learn a lot from our great presenter. My name is Dan Al-Faiz. I am the founder and leader of Evolve organization for developing and supporting individuals, the potential individuals and leaders, to support them in their development journeys through providing them specialized programs and building communities that offers the learning and development in various forms. So I'm going to be here to welcome you. So we're glad to have you, everyone here, and to present the great Dr. Richard Lerner. So please allow me to introduce Dr. Richard. Dr. Richard is a professor of human development at Tufts University, occupying the Big Storm Chair in Applied Developmental Science. Also at Tufts, he directs the Institute for Applied Research in Youth Development. Dr. Lerner has authored more than 700 scholarly publications, including more than 80 authored or edited books, and was founding editor of the Journal of Research Adolescents and of Applied Developmental Science, the latter of which he continues to edit. Dr. Lerner received multiple honors. In 2016, he received American Psychological Association Lifetime Achievement Award for distinguished career contributions to general psychology. In 2014, he received American Psychological Association Gold Medal for life achievement in the application of psychology. In 2013, American Psychological Association URI Award for lifetime contribution to developmental psychology in the service of science and society. In 2010, he was the recipient of John P. Hill Memorial Award for lifetime outstanding work, Society for Research on Adolescents. Dr. Richard, it's truly an honor to have you here. I'll leave the floor for you. We're really excited to learn from you and looking forward to hear about the knowledge and the experience you got.
Thank you so much, Donna. I am truly honored to be with you today, and I'm very grateful for Abu Bakr to organize my time so that I could participate. Thank you very much. So today I want to talk about what positive youth development means and how you can promote it and its implications for youth around the world. Let me give you an overview of the presentation. I'm going to provide a very, very brief history of the positive youth development, or the PYD perspective. I'm going to then talk about how it's studied in current child and adolescent psychology, and different models of how we think about positive development unfolding in youth. And although there are numerous excellent models, I'm most familiar with the one that Jacqueline Lerner and I developed. And I want to tell you about that in particular, and a 10-year study that we did of over 7,000 American youth. I'll give you the key findings of that study and the impacts in the US, and then I'll turn to the international impacts as they exist currently. And I'll then make some conclusions and talk about, at the end, possible next steps for youth program practitioners. So that's the story I'm going to tell in about the next 40 minutes. If you would, save your questions for the end. I hope to have time to share with you with Q&A. So here is a brief history of the PYD perspective. Most of the 20th century was devoted to looking at adolescence as broken. The founder of the study of adolescence, G. Stanley Hall, who was a Harvard PhD and then the founder of Clark University, he said, all adolescents are universally in a period of storm and stress, that they're biologically impelled to be in crisis. And the early people who developed theories or models, Anna Freud, the daughter of Sigmund Freud, Erik Erikson, also followed that idea and said adolescence was a universal and inevitable period of crisis. And the ideas were that adolescents were broken or in danger of becoming broken, not only for themselves, but a danger to society. So for most of the 20th century, people studied adolescence as if they were always in deficit. However, even in the early 60s, 1960s, there was evidence that this idea of adolescence being universal problems was not true. Yes, there are problems that occur during adolescence. In a subsequent slide, I'll show you some of the major problems among US adolescents. But the fact is, there's problems in infancy, childhood, adulthood, and now I'm in old age. I see there are problems in old age. To have problems is to be human. The adolescent years may have some age-specific problems, like associated with pubertal development, but all periods have this. And research showed that adolescents who do have storm and stress in their teenage years also had storm and stress in childhood. So the stereotypes of adolescents being universally in storm and stress began to evaporate in the light of research. So here's what research showed. Most young people, the majority of young people, not only in the US, but around the world, do not have a stormy adolescent period. Although adolescents, especially in the West, spend increasingly more time with peers than with parents, when you ask adolescents what relationships they value the most adolescents still say their parents. Most adolescents also have the core values that their parents have regarding education, social justice, spirituality, and religion. And they share those attitudes with their parents. And even though they're spending more time with peers, at least again in Western adolescents, than with their parents, they choose friends because of the value similarity that they share with their parents. So they're looking for friends who have the same attitudes and values that they've adopted from their parents. But the deficit model, at least in the US, doesn't fade away. There's still resistance to it. Many people who take the deficit model say, oh, we study positive development. We want to make adolescents less bad. We want to lower alcohol use, unsafe sex, school failure, depression, crime and delinquency. Many people define adolescence as the absence of bad. You're a good kid if you're a good child if you don't do things. This is a very dispiriting message to give to young people. You're okay by not doing things. This was the research view that dominated and still dominates funding in the United States. You get grants for lowering these problems, not for promoting things like spirituality, faith, good character. But in the 1990s, there was a birth of a new phase in the scientific study of adolescence. And it was really brought about by practitioners, not by researchers. They said, when we look at the kids in our youth programs, whether it's in school or out of school programs, we don't see all these problems. We see things that kids are doing well and that they're doing things that are of value to themselves, to their families, and their community. And this was really the birth of the positive youth development perspective. And I want to pay particular credit to Rick Little, who was a researcher, was not a researcher, excuse me, but was an ardent advocate for children. And in 1989 and 1990, with a grant from the Kellogg Foundation, which is the foundation of the company that makes all the Kellogg cereal, he founded the International Youth Foundation. And he defined not what kids aren't doing, but what they should do. He said, kids who are doing well show competence. They know how to do things well that are important to themselves and their world. They have confidence that they can be a positive force for good in their families and communities. They are connected positively to their family, their faith leaders, their coaches, if they're in sports teams, to their friends. And they have good character. They have a moral center to them. They know what's right to do, and they are impelled to do it. In 1995, a colleague, Peter Benson, who was a researcher, said caring should be a 5th C of development. And so Rick Little and Peter Benson went back and forth. And then in 1996, Rick Little said, okay, I will accept caring. That is that there are these attributes of kids that we want to see, not that we want to stop, but that we want to promote: competence, confidence, connection, character, and yes, caring. And then he made a hypothesis. He said, when young people have high levels of those 5 C's, a 6th C will emerge. They will be young people who are motivated to contribute positively to themselves, to their families, to their communities, to society. And so if you develop, he hypothesized, these 5 C's, the 6th C will come about. So what evolved was 6 key concepts. Adolescence is a period of major change. In fact, other than infancy, adolescence is the major period of change in the lifespan. But because you can change, because you have the ability to change, that's a strength. You're not locked in. You're not rigidly connected to what you've done yesterday or the year before. Interventions, programs can improve your behavior. And all contexts have strengths. They may be hard to find in some settings, especially in the US, in communities that are suffering from poverty and racism. But there are resources in even those communities. And those are the strengths that can be used to promote positive development. And they're called developmental assets. They're the social nutrients you need, we'll talk about them next, that can be used to promote healthy development. They're found in families, schools, faith institutions, youth-serving organizations, and the community. And then here's the key idea. If the strengths of young people are combined with these assets, then you can promote positive and healthy development in all kids. Perhaps you can't get all kids to an equal level, but you can promote positive things in all kids. And so the PYD perspective ultimately is a very optimistic perspective, because it says that we as people who care for youngsters, it's in our power to promote positive development of all youth. We can work with youth to create asset-rich settings that will enable all youth to do better in life. So Stephen Hamilton in 1999 summarized where the field stood at the dawn of the 21st century. He said, PYD is a model. It's a theory of how you can put together strengths of the child and strengths of the world around the child to promote thriving and health. It's also an approach that will allow you to design effective youth programs. What it says is, look, you have to look at the strengths of young people. You have to find the resources in the environment and build opportunities, programs that will put those together, and then you'll see thriving. But it's also a specific instance of youth programs. So what are some of the models of the PYD developmental process that have been developed? Now, this is a little bit theoretical, but it really has captured the idea of researchers and theorists. It says that positive development involves relationships, relationships between young people and their world, and especially other people. And those relationships are not random. Development is systematic. You can, by using those relationships in a thoughtful and systematic way, you can promote positive development. And that involves mutually influential relations between the young person and the context. The young person is motivated to contribute to the world at the same time that the world is nurturing that young person to be able to contribute. So that's a win-win situation. So you want to look at the integrated actions, what the child is doing in their setting and what the setting is doing to promote the child. This will change across adolescence, of course, but the good news is, and here's the jargon word, there's relative plasticity. You can change kids for the better if you put together their strengths and the contexts. And so we should be optimistic that we can promote equity and justice for all young people. So a lot of people have built models, and I want to show you some of them. William Damon of Stanford University focuses on purpose. And he says the way to build those nurturing relationships is to find the purposes of youth that they want to aspire to in life and push them to achieve a positive, or he sometimes calls it a noble purpose. We mentioned Peter Benson already. He's passed away, but during his time, he looked for developmental assets. Remember, I mentioned that the idea is to find assets, strengths of youth, which he called developmental assets, and strengths of the setting, which he called ecological assets. And he said he found that all youth have 4 assets: a commitment to learning, positive values, social competence. They know how to work positively with their world and people in it. And they have a positive identity. They think positively of themselves. What do they need? They need support from caring adults. They need to be empowered to use their strengths in a positive way. Adults also need to set boundaries for youth so that they don't get into problems that they're not ready to cope with, and set expectations for what they should do positively in their world, and also help youth make constructive use of their time. Jacqueline Eccles, she was interested in finding what motivates a young person. to actually want to work positively in their world. And what she argued is that what you want to do is create expectations for success and valuing of the activities that the youth is motivated to participate in. And it's not just that the youth finds value, but gets support. Remember, Peter Benson said support is an important asset. Gets support from parents, coaches, teachers, faith leaders for those valuable activities, so that the young person has expectations for success and support for the activities that will allow them to have that success. Reed Larson followed Jackie Eccles, and his major emphasis is on out-of-school time activities. We spend a lot of time keeping kids in school, but what do they do that's positive outside of school? So he started to look at how out-of-school time activities can be producers of positive development. And this is consistent with Benson's notion that we want to make certain that youth have constructive use of their time. The worst thing that can happen is you come back from school and you just sit and do nothing. So how do we get them to use their time constructively? And how do we get the community to provide those opportunities outside of school? Margaret Spencer has been particularly interested in the marginalization and, frankly, the prejudice and discrimination that occurs towards kids of color in the United States. I'm not revealing any secrets. We see this on CNN International all the time. There is still persistent racism, and many of these young people live in poverty. So she has said what we need to do is bring in the young person's perspective. How do they experience the world? She calls this phenomenology. We as adults may understand the problems kids are going to be confronted with, but what does the kid make of them? Value the kid's understanding and voice. Empower that young person to be an authority about their own view of the world. Ann Maston has studied the relationships between young people in their world that foster resilience, which means that despite the adversities, the challenges that they might experience, that they have the capacity to maintain positive behavior. As I said earlier, all age levels have challenges, but how do we help young people who are in this period of major physical and psychological and social changes to be resilient to the challenges they face? And what Maston has argued is that we need to interrogate very carefully the settings to make sure that they are fostering that ability to meet challenges. One of the largest youth programs in the world, and the largest in the United States, is 4-H. It comes out of our U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the 4-H's stand for Heart, Hands, Head, and Health. And Mary Arnold and Ryan Gagnon have called this the 4-H thriving model. And it all starts very similar to Bill Damon's ideas, finding the sparks, the things that excite young people, their purposes in life, and how that those purposes can make them feel that they matter and belong as an important part of their social world, and then nurture the relationships that the young person has to support them. Think of a road and being traveled. How do we create a convoy of social support for that young person as they travel from the beginning to the end of adolescence? And here are some of the aspects that Arnold and Gagnon think are important. You've already seen purpose. Bill Damon talked about pro-social is Rick Little's idea of being engaged with the world and making contribution. The developmental outcomes will be better connections, contributions to the world, social competence, and they believe that long-term, this will create happiness, well-being, and both good education and a good role in life. Now we come to the model that Jacqueline Lerner and I developed. And what you'll quickly realize is that this really first builds off of Rick Little's ideas, and second, tries to integrate all the other ideas that you've seen me summarize. So PYD is enhanced optimally when you align the strengths of youth with these developmental assets that Benson talks about, that Margaret Spencer talks about, that everyone else talks about. What are some of the strengths of young people that exist? The ability to control their own behavior and emotions appropriately, having a positive hope for the future, being engaged positively in school, and critically spirituality or religiosity. And these are key strengths. The key assets can be other individuals, caring mentors, teachers, parents, faith leaders, institutions, programs, opportunities to collaborate with adults, and access to those key ecological assets. And all 5 C's are dependent on these nurturant relationships, of these positive relationships between young people in their world. And like Rick Little, we argued that contribution becomes the 6th C of positive development. So here is a drawing that illustrates the learner and learner model. When you take the strengths of young people and integrate them with ecological assets, you'll develop the 5 C's of competence, confidence, character, caring, and connection. And 2 things will happen, learner and learner predict. 1, young people will make positive contributions to their social world, and they will show reduced risk behavior. So I want to spend some time talking about the focus of the learner and learner model. One reason is it's the one I know best, but also this is the one that has been most studied both in the United States and internationally. There are well more than 150 articles, chapters, books written about this work, not only by learner and learner, but by people around the world. And I'll give you some of that information in a moment. So what was the 4-H study of positive development? Again, 4-H is America's largest youth-serving organization. Every year, there are 7 million kids involved in all of the 50 states of the United States. The next largest youth-serving organization, Boys and Girls Clubs, has 3.5 million. So 4-H is twice as large as any other youth-serving organization. No one had ever studied the development of kids repeatedly. That's called a longitudinal study, where you study the same kids repeatedly across their development, their lives. No one had studied the nature bases of PYD in adolescence before the learner and learner study. We started in 2002. We ended about 10 years later. We studied over 7,000 young people and 3,500 of their parents from 42 states. We studied the kids from 5th grade through 12th grade. This is in the US, from about 10 to 18. And one of the good things about the study is that although 4-H was the funder of this study, the leaders of 4-H, Don Floyd, who was then president of 4-H, said this should be a national study. We want to find out about 4-H kids, but we want to also find out about all America's kids. So we enacted this study. Of the 7,000 kids, the majority were not 4-H kids. The majority were kids who were in other programs or in no program. 2,500 were 4-H kids, which is a very large sample for a psychological study. So what are the key findings? First, as Rick Little and Peter Benson originally predicted, there were 5 C's that we were able to identify. These are constructs that exist in the lives of young people and can be measured with good fidelity by measurement instruments. Competence, confidence, connection, character, and caring or compassion. And as Rick Little predicted, although he had no data, remember he was a practitioner, not a researcher, when young people show high levels of these 5 C's, they also become active and positive contributors to their family, school, community, and eventually civil society and democracy. So PYD and contribution develop when the strengths of youth are aligned with these key resources. And what we found is if you put together a young person's ability to regulate positively their emotions, their behaviors, their thinking, hope for a positive future, engagement, and spirituality, we would see that when aligned with the context, positive development would occur. And what we found was there were 3 key elements of the context that were critical. First was mentoring. And what every youth that developed positively had in their life was a positive and sustained relation with at least one caring, competent, and available adult. And we found that the magic time period for this was a year. If such a relationship could continue in the young person's life for a year, they would show positive development. What should happen in the context of those relationships with an adult? Life skill building. Yes, certainly academic skills, but also skills about how to be a good citizen, how to be a good member of your community, how to be a responsible family member, how to be part of a group in which you work together with other people. And in all studies done of positive development so far in the world, we find that these 3 elements are always present if the child is developing positively. So I've named them the big 3 assets for positive youth development. And so here's a diagram showing that. If everything revolves around these developmentally important relationships, something that you've seen every person involved in PYD talk about. So if you have these sustained youth-adult relationships that are positive and nurturing, and if you build skills, life skills in this young person, and give them an opportunity to not only participate, but to be a leader of their programs, to use their skills in positive ways through youth development programs, 2 things will emerge: positive youth development, civic contributions, and by and large, lowered problem behaviors. So what did we find in the United States? Even though 4-H is an out-of-school time program, they regarded our first finding as good news. What was the major source of those big 3? Families, positive relationships with parents and siblings and grandparents and uncles and aunts. A strong family was the major source of those big 3. Many kids, though, even despite having family resources, needed other resources, and youth development programs in the community could do that as well. And programs that have a theory of change that is designed to show those big 3 produce PYD and contribution. And that's a major insight. If you build these 3 attributes into your program, if you design your program around these 3 attributes, you will get positive youth development. So what is the impact in the US of this study? We have, well, now we have, this slide is a little bit out of date. We have over 150 publications, and it's been the most cited study in US history about positive youth development. Remember, this is the Lerner and Lerner project, and as my wife always appreciates me pointing out, this could not have been done without her leadership. She was the director of the 4-H project. I've been invited to speak, but she's the real champion here. So I'm very grateful and proud to have her as not only my collaborator, but as my spouse. So the results of the study changed 4-H programs. For instance, today, Boy Scouts of America, Girl Scouts of the USA, YUSA, Boys and Girls Clubs of America, the Positive Coaching Alliance, and interestingly, the United States Military Academy at West Point have adopted the learner model to develop young people. In fact, we just finished a 5-year study at West Point looking at positive development among the cadets at West Point. So the work embodied in the 4-H study has been adopted so thoroughly that now all national youth serving organizations in the United States claim that they are PYD programs. And so you might imagine that this has had international impact. Yesterday morning, I spoke to a UN group about women's health and reproduction. And they want to use a PYD perspective. The US Aid, UNICEF, World Bank are also aiming their programs at promoting PYD. You can find on their websites the language that I've shared with you about PYD. Moreover, around the world, the 4-H model and its methods are now being used in more than 60 countries, including the 25 nations served by Compassion International, which is a youth sponsorship organization like the Christian Children's Fund or the Save the Children initiative. You sponsor children for some relatively small amount of money per month. They are in 25 nations serving about 2.1 million kids at last count in low and moderate income countries, mostly in Africa, Central and South America, and Asia. And they've adopted the learner model. So here is, and I'm going to go over this relatively quickly because I certainly want to leave time for Q&A. But here are some examples of the impact. And because you have copies of these slides, I'm not going to go into, unless in the Q&A you want me to, what they're doing. But in alphabetical order, I've just taken some examples of what's being done in around the world. So in Canada, they're working with their indigenous people to promote PYD and community engagement. They're also in another project working with rural youth in Saskatchewan, which is a remote area in Canada. In China, what they're doing is translating our work into Chinese and looking at the presence of those 5 C's plus contribution in China. They've also begun using their translated work to look at how rural Chinese people are still able to promote PYD in their kids despite migration from rural to urban areas. In Colombia, they're looking at how school climate promotes pro-social behavior in Colombian adolescents. In Hong Kong, they're looking at how the growth of positive youth development creates life satisfaction and reduces problem behavior in Hong Kong youth. In Iran, positive youth development and self-management strategies are being looked. Can the young person show this intentional self-regulation that we talked about? In Kenya, they're studying how rites of passage from childhood to adolescence, adolescence to adulthood promote positive development. Lithuania is just starting. They've created a Lithuanian measure of positive development, and what they're doing is trying to understand the presence of the C's plus contribution among the youth of Lithuania. In New Zealand, they are trying to look at the practices in different programs, and specifically looking at what they call high-risk youth who may have come from challenged family settings or problems of economic well-being. New Zealand is also looking, assessing how their programs are following the big three and their success in promoting positive development. In Transylvania, they're looking at how marginalized young people can profit in terms of positive youth development by switching the programs for these kids to a PYD perspective. In Turkey, they've also just launched a critical review of research on social and emotional learning of Turkish adolescents. And one of the things that I was very grateful for, I wrote a book many years ago on positive youth development, and it's just been translated into Turkish. In the UK, they're using programs designed to promote PYD to see if substance use is reduced in young people, and they're doing what's called a meta-analysis to see if the effect of PYD programming exists across all programs. In Norway, they're using interventions at the group level to promote PYD, as opposed to, for example, doing one-on-one mentoring. They're doing mentoring for a group. In Romania, they're doing a summer camp to see if you can just over a summer create a context that will lead a young person when they get back from the summer camp to show PYD throughout the rest of the year. In South Africa, they're looking at what exists in Zulu youth in South African townships to promote what are the natural relationships between adults, including parents and kids, that seem to be linked to PYD are the big three there. In Spain, they've also just started to develop a scale to see the distribution of positive development in their kids. And Tanzania, they've translated our measures into Swahili to see if they can identify the C's to see if that works there. Then there are some multinational collaborations. In Italy and Spain, they're looking at whether PYD programs promote civic and a positive political participation of children and adolescents. Lithuania and the Netherlands are doing something positive. They're looking at, does the presence of PYD lead to a positive sense of self and positive civic engagement? And then there is a 38-nation intervention that I couldn't list all the countries here. I will be happy to send them to you if you'd like a list, but they're looking at PYD in school as a basis of promoting PYD. Most of the work, including the 4-H study, focused on out-of-school time programs. So this sort of switching figure and ground to say we should be doing this in school as well. And then I mentioned Compassion International. In El Salvador, we found that faith-based programs, Compassion International is a faith-based program. They show kids in that program not only show higher presence of spirituality than kids in a non-faith-based program, and this was with any kind of metrically highly matched sample, but they had higher levels of character. And in Rwanda, youth in a faith-based program reported higher levels of the big three and higher levels of youth contributions and protection, feelings that this was a program that protected them. So let me come now to some conclusions. And then I wanted to end with talking about some implications for practice. So what does the research and program evaluation show? There's increasing evidence around the world that youth programs that are designed to include the big three promote positive youth development and youth contributions to their community and society. You get positively, civically engaged kids who really want to make a positive difference for themselves, for their families, for their proximal community, and for their society. So therefore, we should design programs around the world, it seems, and that's, you saw the sample of programs I gave you. And again, I can provide more. If anybody wants to email me and write, I can give you, again, there's hundreds of examples I can give you. What should we ask when we're designing youth programs, when practitioners are thinking about putting together a youth program? So you want to say, what changes do we want to promote in our young people? Through what programs? So what is our program, for example, inclusive of those big three? And what do we want to see as an outcome? We want to promote PYD, we want to promote contribution, but what's the end state? Go back to that 4-H Thrive model. We don't stay adolescents forever. What kind of adult citizens do we want to produce by promoting positive youth development? And what groups of youth should we target? And what should their ages be? And where should we target them? The truth is that practitioners know their communities better than researchers. So they should be the ones answering these questions, not researchers. So here are some possible next steps for youth development program practitioners. Youth development program practitioners need to decide how to understand the specific youth context alignments needed for each specific young person in their program. They're the experts in their communities. I'm a researcher, but what I've learned over my, I got my PhD 50 years ago, so I've been doing this for a long time. Of course, I got my PhD when I was 3, I'm still very young, but that was a joke. I don't know if that translates into Saudi, but I'm 50 years post-PhD. I have learned that it's important for researchers to be humble. We think because we have doctoral degrees that we're the experts. We're not the experts about your youth. You are the experts of your youth. And if you take Margaret Beale Spencer's ideas, the youth are the experts about their youth. So we all have to have humility. And we have to work with the specifics of your young people and your communities. Because there's no one way, the phrase in the United States is, there's no silver bullet to accomplish this. We have to figure out how, yes, there's these big three, but how you're going to design that big three is going to be different in different countries. So you need 2 instances of collaboration to create these developmentally nurturing relationships. There's the relationships where a young person is contributing to the world at the same time that the world is building a healthy young person. 1, we need collaborations with youth, families, and communities. And then we need to collaborate with researchers. We're not irrelevant. We can help with measurement and data analysis and program evaluation if we remain humble to the fact that we need to collaborate with youth, families, and communities. So researcher, practitioner, stakeholder collaboration is needed to identify, to measure, and evaluate the meaning and implications of the specific youth context relations pertinent to each young person in each program in each community. And that's a dynamic relation. It's a mutually influential relation. But we can harness those relations. We can harness them if researchers, youth in the communities work together. And if we are collaborating both with humility, but with an unflagging commitment to enhance the lives of every young person we work with. So that is the end of my formal presentation. I want to thank you very much for your attention. And I promised Abu Bakr that I would have some time for Q&A. So if there's any Q&A, I would love to chat with you for the remaining time. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richard. Really an interesting and insightful content and findings. I really enjoyed your content. I enjoyed your spirit. You're really you have a young spirit. We don't care about your age. And a big thanks goes to your wife. I'm pretty sure that she's intellectual and insightful as you are. So
and she's a better speaker than I am. You should invite her sometime.
We should do that. We can have a panel and have her and yourself in the panel. So we're going to open now the people from the Zoom joining us from Zoom. You can write your questions through the chat box. And our participants here, if you have any questions. Yes, go ahead. I think so. Doctor, can you hear the participant here?
No, I can't. I'm sorry. Maybe
Okay.
they speak to you and you can then.
Yes, yes. So tell me that.
My question is, I've mentioned something about helping the children to be authors of their own work, and to promote child agency and to help them have their own voice and choice.
Okay, I think he can't hear you. So let's do your question in two parts. Your questions in two parts. So give me the first part. First of all, he's thanking you and your wife. This is first of all. Tell me the question, the part one. Can you hear him?
I'm sorry. It's maybe he should come to the microphone.
Yes, he's coming.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, good to see you first of all, and thank you to Ms. Lerner for all the efforts they have been putting in this topic. My question, you have talked about how to help the students build their own agency, to be authors of their own word.
Yes.
And you have also mentioned many good things about the collaboration between the eco assets and the individual assets.
Yes.
My question is, in a school context, in education, how can we help the students build this agency? How can they be responsible for their own learning, and they can have good contributions within their families, the communities, and to be good citizens at the same time?
That's a wonderful question. And actually, sir, that is a project that I'm working on right now in the United States. So the important part to do in, and I apologize because I know only the American education system the best, but I can tell you that in the United States, teachers teach what they're expert in, but a child is more than just someone who learns science, technology, math, engineering, or we call it STEM abilities, or language skills, or history skills, or even in religious schools, the text of religious documents. They are a person who also has emotions, has aspirations, has a personality, has an identity, is looking for mattering in the world, wants to find meaning. And so my colleagues and I have just written a book, which it's a short book, and I could send it to Abu Bakr by email as a PDF, and he could freely share it with all of you. Here it is, whole child development, learning and thriving. And it gets exactly at the, and I can share it as a PDF if you'd like. It's called whole child development. What education has been lacking is to teach the whole child, to promote the whole child, to understand the identity and the meaning concerns. This is why Margaret Beale Spencer focuses on the phenomenology of youth development in her model of PYD. What we want to do is not necessarily put it on teachers themselves, but to create a school context where the educational community in that school understands the whole child. What are their motivations? What are their aspirations? How do they, what sparks their interest in life and in things that they want to learn? What are their constraints on their learning? In the United States, we have children who are coming to school and experiencing marginalization because of food insecurity, housing insecurity, health disparities in terms of medical treatment. And yet we put them in school and expect them to attend to their lessons. If we had a whole child perspective in the United States, what we would do is try to understand what the family is doing to help the child and what are the constraints because of the world that family is in. The way to address positive development in the school or thriving in the school context is to teach to the whole child, adjust what happens to the child in the school context so that all facets of that child's being are nurtured, not just their skills in STEM, language arts, history, etc. If we can do that, if we can change the focus of in-school education to a holistic whole child perspective, then we can promote PYD in school and out of school. And you saw in some of my examples, there are some countries that are trying to do that now. We have a few model schools in the United States that are called charter schools or private schools that are trying to do that. But in the public school system, it is very difficult to do that in the United States for two reasons. One, the United States has 50 states, and therefore there are 50 different educational systems, because in the Constitution, the state, not the federal government, runs education. And that's one reason. And then there are unions, labor unions, and teachers resist having more added, and understandably so, they're already overworked and underpaid, but they resist having to do more than they're already doing. So I don't know, I apologize for not knowing this situation in Saudi Arabia, but I would be delighted to talk more with any of you about that. And I will be happy to share this book for free with everybody. If I can email it to Abu Bakr and have him distribute it. Is that possible, Abu Bakr? He's on mute, but hopefully that is possible.
Yes, that's very much possible, Prof.
Okay, thank you. I'll do that when I get off the phone. When I get off the Zoom.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Such an informative answer. We have another question from the virtual audience, which is, what role can companies do to contribute to PYD, and what company efforts, if any, were done?
Say that again, please.
Sure. So what role can companies do to contribute to PYD? And the other part is, what company efforts, if any, were done?
So I think this is a very important question in all countries. One of the issues that companies face is they want their employees to be happy and productive at work, to produce whatever the company is producing, or to generate whatever the company is generating. Just like a young person in school cannot focus on their math lesson or their history lesson if they are food insecure, housing insecure, if they are being discriminated against because of their race or religion. A employee cannot be productive if they're worried about the thriving of their children. And to phrase it in a positive way, if they know that companies are supporting the holistic positive development of the children in their families, they will be motivated to stay and produce for that company. And so some companies have actually thought of this. And so the Altria Corporation, which is a tobacco company, does other things now, but it used to be called Philip Morris. It became the Altria. They were the original funders of PYD, research. I'm sure you've heard of Facebook, and Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan created a huge philanthropy, sort of like a corporate foundation called the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and they're now funding this whole child development work. In fact, they have a special section of the philanthropy devoted to just the sort of educational changes that I addressed in the first question. Other companies, of course, have incorporated childcare settings in their building so that the men and women who are employees could actually bring their children for excellent childcare and not have to worry about that. And then they get to see their child more. They driving to work or coming to work, they're bringing their kid to school, and at the end of their workday, they're taking their kid back home with them. So that's been another major innovation. But for adolescents, that probably is not a good option. But having corporations invest in whole child development and PYD, whether that child is in school, so some of the investment can be there, or in out-of-school programs, would be not only a win for the parents and those young and their children, but a win for the corporation. So more and more, I see companies in the US, but also internationally. I've been working with a group in Germany that makes things like Nivea, if you know the skin cream Nivea, or other skincare products. They've invested €1 billion+ in promoting positive development, the learner and learner model, around the world. And I've been working with their programs in the Philippines and Australia and South Africa to bring those corporate dollars to the children in those communities.
Thank you, Doctor. So I think we have Pyd Model. He's the general manager of Shabab Mujtama'i, who's sponsoring the program, the Youth Workers Empowerment. So Majid, I think you raised your hand. You're still raising your hand, so I'll try to unmute you from my side. Or Bisan, if you can do that. Bisan, are you here? Okay. Yes. Go ahead, Majid.
Hello, good day, everyone. Dr. Richard, thank you very much for the enrichment session that we had an hour ago, and thank you, Dana, for facilitating this session. I'm really glad that we have this session part of the program, and I just want to ensure you, Dr. Richard, that as a company, it's called in Arabic Shabab Mujtama'i, which is youth, and it's the only company in Saudi Arabia that focuses on youth empowerment and youth development. The PYD model, we, as a company, we apply it as one of our core, I would say, infrastructure that we, whatever we have any program or any session or any materials that we publicize, we usually utilize this model. And I can assure you that most of the content that we had, either from Abu Bakr or many youth board organizations, that we utilize the PYD model, and we try as much as we can to make the right awareness in Saudi Arabia. My question to you, Dr. Richard, and I'm really thanking you for your participation, also your acceptance to conduct this session. Applying the PYD, whether I'm speaking from Saudi Arabia or any other cultures, is it gonna be different than the USA or Europe or Asia? How we can ensure the application of the model to be successful whenever we apply it in any country. Thank you very much for, again, for your participation. And I hope that we can continue working with you as we move forward with our programs.
Well, I would love, it would be a great honor to continue to work with you, sir. And thank you for involving me. I just want to say, because of time, I didn't go into the details of adaptation, but I did say in my slides, there's no silver bullet, no program. You can't take a US program and put it into Saudi Arabia, much like you can't take a Saudi Arabian program and put it into the US without adapting it to the specifics of the communities, the families, and the people that you're working with. There are, there's an old saying in the literature of human development, each human being is like all other human beings. Each human being is like only some other human beings, and each human being is unique. All three of those things are true. So we all have characteristics as humans that are shared because we're human. We all have respiratory systems and circulatory systems, but each person is like only some other people. People from the United States have one cultural background. People from Saudi Arabia have another. People from Uganda and Rwanda, where I work, have yet another. And Uganda and Rwanda, they share a border, but they're very different countries. And then no two people are identical. One of the biological facts of life that we're only learning now because we've studied epigenetics more and more in the medical and biological sciences is that what we used to believe that identical twins had the same DNA, that's not true. They have the same nuclear DNA, but DNA is all over the cell. For example, there are these little energy factories in every cell called mitochondria, and there's DNA in them, and identical twins don't share that. So even our very basic cellular structure makes every human being unique. So all are true. And so, yes, the big three seem to work universally, but then we have to say, well, what do we need to do to adapt it to our specific setting? And then even more, what do we need to do to make it relevant to the specific children in our setting? So in the United States, there are differences between rural and urban and racial differences. Some are very unfortunate and some are just because there are those differences. They're not unfortunate, but we need to approach programming like that. What can we take that we know all people share? What can we learn from studying what was done in Norway and in El Salvador? What can we learn by studying things in the Middle East, but not our country? What are the things that must be done Saudi specific? And then even more, what must be done to get the whole child to thrive in the specific community, in the specific program with the specific young people we're working with? That's very challenging. And that's why researchers should be part of the collaboration with families and youth and practitioners, and with the business world as well. In fact, if you think about it, what part of society would you omit from wanting to be a positive collaborator and making young people better? There's no part that you would want to omit. So that would be my approach. I know that's very general, but I know we're probably running out of time. So I can go on for this. I'm very excited about this work. So I hope this is the beginning of a conversation, not the end of it.
Thank you so much. We're running out of time. We can't get enough from you and your experience and knowledge. Everyone here enjoyed. It was really a pleasure to have you. On behalf of everyone here, thank you so much. And hopefully in the future, in the very near future, we're gonna have you again, and your wife as well. We will not have you alone again. We're gonna have her as well. So thank you so much.
Well, she's in the house right now because I'm Zooming from home, but she's taking care of my 4-year-old grandson at the moment.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you so much. We wish you best of luck, and inshallah we will see you soon. Have a great day, Dr. Richard.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.